Robert Wanek, great 9/11 truth activist, great patriot. He is in high school, and he's won one of our postering contests before. And this time he got expelled for handing out the actual inserts that show you what's really in the flu vaccine. They admit there's mercury. It can cause Guillain-Barré, brain damage, neurological disorders, cancer. They don't want that being handed out. So he's trying to warn fellow students in his off time at school, and this is what happened to him. Robert Wanek, tell us again where you're hailing from and exactly what happened to you.
Well, thanks for bringing me on today, Alex. I attend school in Breckenridge, Minnesota. I attend Breckenridge High School, and every Wednesday we have a group meeting of classes called Connections. Last Wednesday we were given forms to receive our H1N1 vaccines on Wednesday the 16th. I decided it'd be a great idea if I'd fill out one of these forms and attend the clinic to educate others of the possible risks, which a school should actually promote self-education of students.
No, you're a prisoner. You're not allowed to do that. You're to keep your mouth shut, and only in supermaxes are you not allowed to talk to the other prisoners. So you're in a supermax.
Exactly what's happening. So first step that was taken was my principal called my mom and asked her if she had signed this H1N1 form, knowing that I'm anti-vaccine. She said yes because she supports the education of other students who may not be aware of the risks. So
they were already watching you and didn't know why you were agreeing to do it.
Exactly. They were calling my parents.
Well, that's what wardens do. You know, he's doing his job as a warden. Go ahead.
And so the 16th came this Wednesday, and they were calling the juniors down to the science room to get vaccines from Wilkin County Public Health. They called my name. I went down there with about 3 file folders of information that simply had the inserts of the H1N1 vaccine, the Novartis vaccine.
Yeah, you're like somebody in Tuskegee, Alabama, going and warning blacks not to be injected with syphilis. So you're a serious thought criminal. You're going to talk to people who are about to have a medical experiment done on them.
Absolutely. So my principal was at the door, and he said, "Robert, you can go sit down." So I went and sat down next to a nurse. As soon as she told me to roll up my sleeve, I stood up and said, "Attention, I just want to hand out some information about vaccine risks." I only got a few flyers out before my principal came up, rammed his hand into my lower back, and started forcing me towards the door. I said, "Don't touch me, I'm leaving." He said, "I'm just escorting you out." I was out of the room within 30 seconds, but I decided that I couldn't go back to class yet if these kids had no clue what they were putting in their bodies, so I decided to address the line. So I handed out about 30 flyers, one to each kid in line except for the science teacher's son, who refused one, and many of them started dispersing and leaving the line. Others just said, I have a choice, and
I mean, this is real rebellion against tyranny, but the science teacher kid, I'm a scientist. I don't look at what's in the vaccine. I trust my Soviet government. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so these students started leaving, and moments later I heard a student from inside the vaccine room say, "I have a choice. I don't want it anymore. I'm not going to get it." And
so they didn't even know they had a choice, because all over the country it's come out they are forcibly inoculating mainly elementary students because they don't know.
And the funny part about it was the nurse actually tried to almost tell him that it was mandatory.
Excuse me, what did you hear?
I heard him say, "I don't want it, I'm not going to take it." And she said, "Your parents signed a form, you have to take it." And he said, "I'm not taking it." And he walked out of the room, and all you heard was the public health officials trying to lobby his opinion to keep him in there, saying that...
But see, that's how this works. One person says no, and half the people in the line go, "Yeah, I don't want it either." They were just intimidated under the group psychology, the mob psychology, to do it.
And then once these students started walking in with these printed off flyers, they started asking questions like, "Have you guys heard of this?" And the nurses either wanted to take the flyers or get these vaccines done as quick as they could, because every single student walked in with one. That's when my principal emerged in the hallway with a law enforcement officer and said, "Go back to class, Robert." He yelled at me down the hallway, "or I'll have you arrested and removed from school grounds. And I said, I know the policy. You can't just override the policy. The policy for being out of class is a detention. And I was more than willing to take a detention to get these flyers out. And then, after that, I decided I'd go back to class because I knew that they would ramp up the punishment. But at 1:30 is when my class ended, and they announced, any teachers or faculty that want the vaccines, please report to the science room. So the bell rang, and me and about 5 other students who are educated on the issue of vaccinations sprinted down to the science room.
So you came back with cavalry. I bet they didn't like that. Now you're trying to warn the adults of the mercury and the cancer viruses.
This time I came back with printed off articles of the 14-year-old student from Virginia who got Guillain-Barré syndrome. And I started telling people about how the Wilkin County Public Health form the kids were given said there's no link to GBS. And this started raising eyebrows because I had an article that directly links the swine flu to GBS, but the public health official was not about to let me in. She actually pushed me as I was going in the door and then put one hand on each side of the door and said, "You're not coming through." So I could not get in. But what I did was I ducked and slid under her arm into the vaccine room where some teachers were already being vaccinated. I handed out about 3 or 4 flyers, and the science teacher comes up to me, and I said, "Just let me hand out flyers. You can get your vaccine. I just want to hand out flyers, and then I'll leave." He grabs me, both hands by the shirt, and says, "Get out." And right now I had a student with a camera just for protection in case I would get assaulted. And he puts his hands out and says, "I'm not assaulting you," and proceeds to ram me with his chest to make it look like he's not assaulting me. And he rams me out the door, and he notices that there's a student out there that has a camera. He doesn't know if the camera's filming or not filming, but this obviously upsets him because he just broke the law. He just put his hands on a minor. He goes to grab the camera, and the student does a handoff to me. I start walking down the hallway with the camera, and it takes him a while, but he notices, runs up to me, and what happened next was something that I didn't expect to happen. I thought he would ask me for the camera, but before asking me, he grabs me by my shoulders and says, "Give me the camera." Now, the policy is, if you refuse to give up an electronic device, you receive 2 detentions. Now, if the school was just and followed their policies, this would be definitely worth continuing my operation of...
But this guy is Judge Dredd, so he's going to physically punish you.
Yeah, so I said, "You know you're not getting the camera. Give me the 2 detentions." He goes, "It doesn't work that way for me." He then grabs me from behind as if he's bear hugging me, but aggressively, and begins to jerk me around trying to get the camera, and which leads to me being flung sideways into a locker. I then got free and began to remove the memory card because I didn't want to be assaulted anymore in the hallway, so I figured I'd give him the camera and keep the memory card for any footage. And what he did now then was grab my wrist with the memory card on it, grab my wrist hard, and he said, "Give me the hard drive. You're not taking the hard drive."
So he wanted the evidence of what he's done. I have a special guest with us in the next hour. We're going to come back in 1 minute while we're getting that guest ready and have you finish, Robert Wanek. We've got your video up on Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. You have school witnesses, though, of what they did. Finish the story and what you're going to do to stand up against these tyrants. Because if you let them beat you up, next they'll just intensify the abuse.